There is a silent script we are all handed when we were young. We're led to believe that by this stage of life, the heavy lifting, it should be done. We should be settled, the house paid off, the career solidified, the path clear. So when life takes an unexpected turn, whether it's a divorce we didn't see coming, a retirement that feels more like an ending than a beginning, or a quiet sense that something isn't quite right anymore, we don't just feel uncertainty, we start to question ourselves. We look at our lives and think, I didn't expect to feel this unsettled at this stage in my life. And if you're feeling that today, I want to offer you a different perspective. I'm sharing this as a woman who has walked this path herself. I know what it's like when the story you thought you were living suddenly changes. But what if feeling unsettled isn't a sign that something has gone wrong? What if it is actually a sign that something important is beginning? Whether you're starting over at this stage of life, there are a few hard truths no one really prepares you for. And in this video, I want to walk you through 5 of them. Not to overwhelm you, but to steady you so you can understand what's actually happening and move forward with more clarity and confidence. I'm Dee Dee Sung, and welcome to Follow Your Lighthouse. This is a space for women navigating the messy, beautiful middle of midlife and beyond. So let's begin with the first hard truth, and the one we can struggle with the most. You are not starting from scratch. You see, we can confuse starting over with starting from zero. And that confusion, well, it can feel destabilizing. You look at a new chapter, maybe starting a new business, navigating a new relationship status, or relocating to a new city, and suddenly you feel unsteady. You may feel like you are standing at the bottom of a mountain you don't have the energy to climb. And society reinforces this. It tells you that if you pivot now, you are walking away from the life you've built. It tells you that your value was tied to your previous title, your previous role. Well, that simply isn't true. When you start over in your 20s, you're not starting over, you're starting out. You're making decisions with limited information, learning as you go. When you start over in your 60s, you're building from experience. Think about what you've navigated, the decisions you've made under pressure, the way you've learned to read people and situations, the judgment you've developed over time, and the perspectives you now carry. All that wisdom, it doesn't disappear just because a job title changes. You've learned how to step into a situation and understand what's really going on. You have a stronger sense now of what matters to you and where your energy belongs. That's why this isn't starting from scratch. It's starting from experience. And when something in your life changes, you don't lose what you've learned, you carry it with you. Many women come to define themselves by the roles they've held for a long time. So when a role ends, it can feel like something essential has been lost. But what carries forward isn't the title, it's what you learned inside the role. Years of running a household teaches prioritization and how to manage many moving parts all at once. Navigating the end of a relationship teaches discernment, self-trust, and how to have difficult conversations. While caring for someone through illness teaches steadiness, advocacy, and emotional endurance. And none of that disappears. You are not starting empty-handed. You are bringing a lifetime of experience with you. Now, before we move on to the second truth, I want to offer you a simple way to get your footing again. If this conversation is resonating, but you still feel a little bit unsteady about what comes next, I created something to support you. It's called the 72-Hour Compass Reset. It's a short 3-day guide designed to help you pause and get clear on what comes next. I've linked it below in the description if you're curious. And this brings us to the second truth, one that takes real courage. You must grieve the life you thought you'd have. This is the part that's hardest to sit with. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's quiet. You see, most of us carried a picture of how life would look by now. By this stage, certain things would be settled, and when that picture changes or disappears, it can leave a real sense of loss. And that loss deserves to be acknowledged because it's hard to move forward if you're still holding on to the future you thought you were going to have. There can be a real grief in that, and that grief doesn't mean something went wrong, it means something mattered to you. It's possible to feel sadness about a relationship that ended, even if you know it was the right decision. It's possible to grieve a career that's over, even if you were ready to leave it. Where things get complicated is when we try to move past that too quickly, when we rush to stay busy, when we rush to fill the space, when we tell ourselves we're fine before we actually are. If the loss isn't acknowledged, it doesn't disappear, it shows up later, often in the same patterns, just in a different setting. And giving yourself time to recognize what's been lost isn't about getting stuck in it. It's what allows you eventually to set it down and move forward without carrying it with you. And as you begin to let go of what no longer fits, something else starts to shift as well. You may notice your relationships don't feel the same anymore. And that brings us to truth number 3, your circle will change. You see, as you grow into a new season of your life, the people around you may not always know how to relate to this version of you. Some will cheer you on, others will quietly wish you'd stay exactly where you were. And I've had to navigate this tension myself, and I know exactly how heavy it can feel. I have friendships that go back decades. We share a history that is precious to me. But as I stepped into my 60s, I began to notice that while we shared a past, we weren't always moving in the same direction anymore. And for a long time, I carried a lot of guilt about that. I wondered whether something was wrong with me because that connection didn't feel the same as it once had. I felt a quiet pressure to keep things exactly as they were, simply because they had always been that way. And what I eventually learned is that you can honor the history without being held by it. It is not about ending friendship or burning bridges. It is about adjusting expectations. And over time, I came to understand that relationships need to feel alive in the present, not only meaningful because of the past. Some people remain closely connected to earlier chapters of our lives. They hold our history, and that matters. And others are more aligned with who we're becoming now, curious rather than cautious, open rather than unsettled. And making room for what's ahead often means allowing space for both. And when that sense of belonging shifts, it can also change how visible you feel. Which brings us to truth number 4. Invisibility is a superpower. We often hear that women over 50 become invisible. You walk into a store or a meeting and you feel eyes pass right over you. We're taught to see that as something negative, as if being noticed is what gives us value. But there's another way to understand it. When you're younger, you're often very aware of how you're coming across. At work, in relationships, in the world. There's a lot of energy spent managing impressions. And as that attention fades, something else becomes possible. You're less focused on how you appear and more focused on how things actually feel. And that creates a different kind of freedom. When you're not preoccupied with being noticed, you start to notice more. The room, the dynamics, and your own preferences. This isn't a loss, it's a shift in position, one that gives you more range and more choice than you had before. And with that clarity, time starts to feel different as well. Which brings us to truth number 5. Time is no longer your enemy. In our 30s, time often felt like something we were racing. Career, family, milestones, everything felt urgent. While later in life, the relationship with time begins to shift. I think about Bonnie Raitt. She didn't record "I Can't Make You Love Me" until she'd lived enough to sing it from experience. She's spoken about how different that success might have been had it come earlier before she had the capacity to hold it. And that's one of the quiet gifts of this stage of life. You have the perspective to handle what you create. You're not running out of time. You're no longer racing it. You're running on your own time. I sometimes hear this described as a strategic pause. In earlier years, a pause felt like falling behind. And now it's a choice. When you stop rushing, your decisions change. You become more deliberate about where you invest your energy. It's true that there's less time ahead than behind, but that makes time more valuable, not something you're running out of. You start spending it where it actually matters. And that kind of clarity brings a different kind of efficiency. Now, if one of these 5 truths landed for you today, I want you to notice which one it was. This season can feel disorienting at times. And if that's where you are right now, you don't have to sit with it on your own. Earlier, I mentioned a short, free guide called the 72-Hour Compass Reset. It's there if you'd like some support getting clear on what comes next. And the link is in the description below. And before you head off, I'd really like to hear from you. Which of these 5 truths did you need most today? Was it the one about grief or the one about how relationships change? Let me know in the comments. I read them and I value hearing where you are. And if this video resonated, you can let me know by giving it a like, as it helps more women find this conversation. Thanks for joining us today. Take care. And I'll see you in the next video.